Let me begin by saying the goal at NABD was your success. But today, I want to go inside the numbers and talk about what long-term success is in the subprime auto finance industry. And to do that, I want to cover 5 things in my presentation. First of all, I want to talk about short-term indicators that don't guarantee or predict future success in this business. It's not wrong to look at those short-term indicators, but it's wrong to find a pathway to long-term success in this industry by using these short-term indicators. Then I want to tell you how important it is that timing is a key in any business. And the timing is perfect to succeed in subprime auto finance today. The best profit opportunities are right now, and I'm going to explain why. Then I want to go into what are the attributes that I've seen the most successful operators have to be successful in the long term in this business. And I've just finished the mid-year benchmarks for this industry, which are going to be available to you at this show, and I'm going to share some of that with you. Then I want to show you the 5 most profitable business models from my $22 billion analytical database. I'm going to show you where the money is in the deep subprime. And I want to conclude by talking about how to achieve long-term success in your business. So with that, let's get started. What are the short-term indicators that I was referring to that don't predict long-term success and in fact can become a distraction? First is, and maybe some of you judge your business this way, I hope not, but the number of vehicles you sold today or this month, your cash balance on a daily or monthly basis, your sales revenues compared to the prior year, accrual basis financial statement income. Yes, I'm guilty. I generated those for 30 years for dealers, but I realized that they don't present a true picture. It's really metrics that are the best way to measure your performance in this business. And finally, the number of lots that you have. None of these things are guarantees of future success. It's not wrong to look at them, but it's wrong to use them for long-term planning. Here's why. Number one, keeping vehicles sold is more important than just originations. And I just wrote 5 articles on this. I'll help you take a look at them because I think they'll provide some insights into what seems to be working the best long term. We know that cash is here today, but it's spent tomorrow. So just because you have cash in the bank and a positive cash balance doesn't guarantee that you're going to have it in the future. Sales revenues, particularly in buy here, pay here business, often do not convert into cash. So just looking at your sales revenue isn't a good measure. Accrual basis financial statement income, it hasn't been collected yet and may not be collected. So that's not a good indicator. And finally, it may be fine to have multiple lots, but bigger is not necessarily better. It's just bigger. So I want to take a longer-term view on how to be successful in this business. I want to look at it from a different perspective, and to do that, I'm going to go inside the numbers. First of all, timing. As I mentioned, when opportunity knocks, it's time to take action. And I'm going to show you why the best profit opportunity in subprime auto finance is right now. The timing is absolutely perfect. And to do that, I'm going to use some Experian data and some of my own data to illustrate what I'm talking about. When I am talking about subprime, I'm talking about customers who have bureau scores less than 600. And when I talk about deep subprime or buy here, pay here, those are customers with a bureau score of less than 500. And these are Experian definitions, and I'm going to use some of Experian's information. They do a great job in providing some demographics on the industry on a quarterly basis, and these are the second quarter numbers, so you get to look at the first half of the year. How big is the automotive finance receivable base? At the end of the second quarter, it was $1,149 billion. It makes the second largest segment, consumer segment, only behind student loans. And a third of that, a third of the used car financing over on the one side of this slide is provided by banks in this country. So over $1 trillion of automotive receivables outstanding. Well, what's happened over the last few years is that Wall Street, with auto bond securitizations, has flooded the market with a lot of cheap money. And they've laid the risk off to investors with the promise of some very high yields. And that's created all the competition that you felt over the last 3 years. Now, don't get me wrong, auto bonds are an important source of large amounts of capital to this industry, but some of the deals weren't structured the way you would do them. And I'll get into that here in a minute. But how big is the buy here, pay here segment? How big is it? Experian estimates it's almost 7% of total receivables, and I'll do the math for you. That's $80 billion. So we've had about $80 billion outstanding. What this slide doesn't show you is that before all the competition, buy here, pay here was over $100 billion. So in the last 3 years, we've lost about $20 billion of market share, but we're going to get that back. We're going to get that. They just rented it for a couple of years. So where is the opportunity? Why do I say that the opportunity is right now? At the end of the second quarter, subprime auto finance had shrunk to 19% of all the outstanding loan balances, and deep subprime and subprime fell to the lowest point in the last 5 years. And the reason for that is that Wall Street has shifted. They've shifted their emphasis to prime and near prime. And the money is flowing into those two segments. That's an opportunity for you. That's where you come in. This is our chance for you as an independent, if you're positioned, to get that market share back and get those customers back. And as the slide on the right shows, that the deep subprime has suffered the biggest decrease over the last few years as a result of these auto bond securitizations. But now that that money's moved out of the way, it's time for you to prosper. And in Fitch reports in 2017, in the second quarter, they gave us an indication that in terms of volume, we have reached a peak. Most of the players that have been around for years had tightened up and cut back on originations. And starting in the second quarter of 17 and continuing to 18, we've started to see that competition decrease. Credit unions have continued to be very aggressive, and they continue to grow in this market share, but I think they've got some challenges as well. With new credit loss measurement standards, they're going to have to reckon with all the paper that they've put on the books in the last few years in a highly competitive environment. So I want to talk about how the independence model differs from what we've seen on Wall Street with the securitizations. And in this slide, in the first column, I'll use the Experian data for deep subprime, and they indicated in their most recent information that the amount financed in the industry was almost $14,000, $13,894. And for the last 19 years, I've done all the benchmarks for the buy here, pay here industry. And last year, the amount financed was the highest that it's ever been since I've been doing it, 19 years, and it was just slightly under $12,000, $11,951. So the amounts that the independents were financing were 16% lower than what Wall Street was promulgating with their securitization models. The terms, The average term, according to Experian, was 55 months. Some were 70 months. In the buy here, pay here benchmarks, the longest term was 44 months. And by the way, that's the longest term in the last 19 years that I've been looking at this industry. So the independents were 25% shorter in term than the deep subprime paper that was embedded in the auto bond securitizations. The payment amounts were roughly the same, and so were the average financing rates roughly the same. So it's fair to say that that the auto bond securitizations included much later model vehicles, higher prices, higher amounts financed, and a much longer term. And what S&P pointed out as some of these bonds were not performing is that as lenders increased the mix of longer-term loans, particularly in the subprime, loss severities continued to rise, and so did defaults. Because loans with longer terms remain outstanding longer and are more exposed to adverse changes in borrowers' credit conditions, and also adverse changes in the condition of the vehicles. So time is your enemy. Time is your enemy. And clearly, I don't believe that the longer-term model is the road to a pathway to success in this industry. So what are the attributes? What do you need to have long-term success in subprime auto finance? Well, there's 10 things, and I hope that that all of you will develop these things in your own operation if you don't have them, and don't leave this show without focusing on these things. First of all, a cash-efficient business model which generates an acceptable return on investment. And think about that. You've got your life's work, most of you, your life savings in this business. You're entitled to a return commensurate with the risk that you're taking. If I was talking about any investment to you, you would ask me what kind of return you could expect. So know the return on your investment in your subprime operation. You have to have the right capital. As Ingram said, capital is the mother's milk of this business, and don't overlook owner's equity. You need some equity in your business. That provides the flexibility that you need to be successful. You have to have a compliance management system. You're probably reading that Trump is overhauling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and he is. We're definitely seeing changes there, but compliance isn't going away. And you need a compliance management system to meet those challenges. You need a competent team of knowledgeable professionals and to help you steer the ship. You need good locations with high traffic. You can do all the marketing you want, but it's still having a good location or locations in a high traffic area that's so important. You need a proactive marketing program, and you need to integrate social media in that process. That's where it's at. That's how to connect with the subprime customer today. You need a prudent and consistent underwriting system. You need diligent collection operations. The exciting thing is that the technology that we have today is the best that it's ever been. We have more technology today than we've ever had, but you have to implement it into your business, and you have to integrate it with your systems to become more efficient and make more from less. And finally, you have to have performance metrics to control and measure the risk that you're taking. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these things here in a minute. A proven business, profitable business model, because it all starts with the right business model and it all ends with the wrong one. You can't overcome a bad business model. And I'm going to tell you that what I'm about to show you is based on $22 billion worth of analysis, over 2 million loans that I've looked at. And what do you call a guy that sits around all day looking at losses in this industry? That makes me the buy here, pay here proctologist. So let's look at what we've learned. The 5 most profitable business models. And they, first of all, before operating expenses, before collection costs, and before interest expense, the top ROI was almost 50%, 49.1% on an annual basis. Now, if I can earn that in the stock market, I'd be pretty happy, but I think we'll agree that's a pretty exceptional return. So what are the attributes that drive that kind of return? Well, if you look at this slide, all of them are using simple interest, because simple interest is the one thing in this industry that generates more cash. Simple interest is the way to go. So think about that. What's interesting is the highest returns are not necessarily tied to the lowest losses. Not at all. You can see that the loss rates vary, and the highest return doesn't have the lowest loss rate. So eliminating losses isn't a secret either. Is it location intensive? Well, they're all in different states. So it doesn't seem to be unique. But if we go over to the far column of average cash and deal, now we start to see what one of the important drivers is. The average cash and deal is a little over $4,000, because I represent to you that cash and deal is a measure of risk in this business. That's how much money you're putting in the street. That's how much money that you're wagering every time you make a loan. So cash and deal is an important driver. Let's look a little deeper at these business models. What's the average ACV of the vehicle? About $5,000. No, it's not 10, it's not 12, it's not 9, 11 like we've seen in some of the auto bond securitizations. It's an average of about $5,000. What's the down payment? It's almost, well, it's a little over $900 is the average. What's the term? And this is another important driver. As I said, longer is not better. The average term is just a little less than 36 months. That cash is coming back quicker. You know, you can't get a return until you've recovered your investment. So the quicker you recover your investment, the quicker you get to profitability. The average amount financed was a little over $9,000, $9,300. The average interest rate, 23.6%. And the average weekly payment was about $88. I'm not telling you to go back and replicate this model. You've got to find your own niche in your business, but what I am telling you is that this model will generate a high return, and we've seen it consistently be the highest ROI for a number of years. So as you go back, think about your own business model and evaluate it from the standpoint of what kind of return am I getting, how quickly am I getting my cash back, how much risk do I want to take, how much capital do I need. All those things are very important. So just think about that as you go back. Finding the right capital provider is extremely important. So how do you do that? What are the things that they're looking for? I work with 32 of them, so I understand how they think and what they look for, and I want to share that with you, because without capital, you can't be successful in the deep subprime business. First of all, they want good systems and processes. They want metrics to support your portfolio performance. They want a proven and profitable business model. They want to see an experienced management team. They want a compliance management system with a chief compliance and a privacy officer. Privacy is extremely important today. We've read all the hacking problems that are out there, so clearly we need a good compliance management system. You need equity in your business. It's extremely important that you don't over leverage, because you need the flexibility. Nobody knows what's going to happen in this economy tomorrow. So you've got to have flexibility. You've got to have equity in your inventory. That's so important, that you develop some equity in your inventory, because that's an important source of liquidity and flexibility. And finally, you want to have historical financial statement profitability, but you've got to have positive cash flow, because any lender wants to see how he's going to be paid back. So cash flow is so important in this industry. Compliance management system, what does that entail? First of all, you have to have a written understanding of the compliance responsibilities. Number two, you've got to have employees who understand them. Number three, they've got to be integrated into your business operations. You can't just talk the talk, you've got to walk the walk. Finally, you've got to have a monitoring system that determines if it's really working. And when it doesn't work, you've got to take corrective action. So you have to make sure that it's updated, stays current. There's 4 steps, just 4 steps. Just like a car, there's 4 wheels on a car, there's only 4 steps in a compliance management system. You have to plan, you have to do, you have to check, and you have to act. Those are the 4 steps. And if you think compliance is expensive, try the cost of non-compliance. So the reality is this is something that you have to do, because compliance issues can bring you down. You have to have a competent professional team, because they're the key to success. And what does that entail? Well, first of all, you got to have an accountant or a CFO in your business with industry knowledge. He's got to help you measure the risk and keep you on the right path. No, and he's not the guy who says, gee, boss, you're the smartest I've ever met. Yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. You want a guy who looks at the financial impact of everything that you do, because you're entrepreneurs. You want to have an attorney with industry knowledge. He's going to help keep you on the right legal path. You want to have a capital partner with industry experience that's going to be with you over the long term. You want to have consultants to supplement your management team and give you the industry experience you need. And you want to have a competent team internally with the right players doing the right things. And what does that mean? So I'm asked all the time, well, what do you need to run one of these businesses successfully? And the answer is, well, first of all, you got to have management, so you need a good general manager. You've got to have collections if you're carrying the paper, so you've got to have a collection manager and collectors. You've got to have good underwriting. You've got to have an F&I manager and maybe some good underwriters, depending on how big your operation is. And this is very important. You've got to have a stipulation verification personnel, independent from your sales staff. Your salespeople are important, but you have to have somebody verifying the information that they're gathering, because that's what you're using to make your decisions on. So make that independent from the sales process. You've got to have sales and lot personnel. You've got to have compliance. You need a chief compliance officer and a privacy officer. You need, for inventory, a way to recon, make ready, and you have to have some mechanics, or you can outsource that. You have to have vehicle acquisition personnel to make sure that you're getting the right vehicles, because you can't sell them if you don't have them. And it all starts, sometimes ends, with the right or the wrong vehicles. Technology. You've got to implement technology in your business, so you need a technology director and maybe some support, or perhaps you farm that out to a third party, or maybe you have everything in the cloud. You have to have an accountant, a financial officer, and a good risk manager, and probably you're going to need some admin and support personnel. Sounds like a lot of people. Well, the good news is that you can combine some of these duties. You can find the strengths of your people. You can reduce staffing. You can outsource some of these things. But those are the areas that I see in the most successful operations. They have all of those people in place to be successful. No substitute for good locations. Again, how important that is. Make sure you do your demographics when you're looking at new locations, and you're sure that it's the right area for you with strong traffic of the type of customers that you're looking for. A proactive marketing plan, and what that has to include is you've got to have an effective website, you've got to have social media integrated with your website. You have to have a sales team that's responsive to the leads that you're generating. They're not finding any leads in the sports section, so the reality is they need to be following up on the leads that you generate on a very timely basis. Should you use other marketing? Well, radio, direct mail, the tax refund business, referrals. Yeah, all those work and they're a good complement. But one of the simplest and most overlooked is the welcome call. Is after a customer buys a vehicle, call them up. How the delivery experience goes? How's the car performing? Everything going well? Oh, by the way, do you have any friends that would like to buy a vehicle? Could we talk to them? They just opted in. And so that's your source of new leads, but it's also building the bond with the customers. So don't overlook a welcome call. Have a tracking system that measures those results so you understand what's working. A BDC, don't have a BDC? Well, it's helped build the franchise business. It can help rebuild the buy here, pay here business. CRMs, those are important as well. If you're not familiar with these things or you don't have them in your operation, don't leave this conference without finding those solutions in the exhibit hall. So it's important that you understand all the components of a good marketing plan. Good underwriting systems. The most important goal of a good underwriting system is matching the customer with a vehicle they can afford over a reasonable term. Again, it's a matching process. Not necessarily the car that they want, but the one that they can afford and it'll run over the life of the contract. You need an independent verification of customer stipulations. As I mentioned, you've got to base decisions on the right information. You have to have a consistent business model. Changes in this industry can be devastating, so you want to keep consistency. And you have to monitor what's working, and you do that with metrics. So make sure that you have a metrics platform and data that supports what you're doing with your business model and the rest of your operations. So what's the industry done since 2014? I've recapped some things from our benchmarks in the last 4 years. Average sales price has increased 10% in the last 4 years. Average amount financed, this is the independents now, has increased 11% in the last 4 years. Average monthly payment stayed just about the same. It's increased about 1%, not even keeping pace with inflation. So flat monthly payments. And our term has gone from 40 months to 44 months, and you're going to see even longer in the first half of 2018. That's an increase of 10%. So I ask you, is this the pathway to success? Is this the roadmap to success for this industry? Well, take a look at this. Here's the metrics. I've done the metrics on how that business model is performing. And I say to you that our customers only want to keep the vehicle for 2 years. So when you go longer than 2 years, you're filling your portfolio with air. You're filling your portfolio with air. So the longer you go, the more risk that you have. It's important to note that as a result of the higher amount finance, that the amount collected through default is potentially a little higher. It's gone from 69.42 in 14 to 85.80. Hey, that sounds good. Yeah, that's what we want to do, collect more money. Oh, but a couple other factors. The average deficiency at default has also increased to a little over $7,000, but worst of all, our default rate has increased to 35%. So we're not really collecting more money. All we're doing is creating higher and longer and more defaults. And let me put it into perspective. Our collections have only increased 2% each year for the prior years, but the amount charged off has now increased 19%. 19%. So would you trade a 19% charge off to collect 2%, try to collect 2% more. I don't think that's a good bet. So think about that as you evaluate your business model. And also think about, do you have metrics to see how your portfolio is really going? You're not going to find those in your financial statements. So let's talk about the mid-year benchmarks. What's happened there? Well, first of all, our average charge-off before any recoveries is $9,394, the highest it's been in 19-year history. The average net dollar loss, $7,600, highest in history. Average default rate, 35%. Average gross dollar charge-off at deficiency, 43%. Oh, and recoveries, they're less too. Remember when we used to take a salvage vehicle and get $1,000 for it? Now we get $150, $300. So recoveries aren't rising. They aren't rising at all. And what's the worst month after origination? It's February. Because if you use that tax refund to make a deal instead of making that deal better, it's fool's gold. It's fool's gold. So think about that you can't make a living off the tax refund business. You've got to use that to catch up in your collections and build stronger deals with your customers. We're at 8 months now at the highest default point in the life of these contracts. So as you look at this, although 22 months is the highest cumulative point in the curve, 8 months is the end of the honeymoon period. They're sizing up whether they're going to keep the car, and you're sizing up whether you want to keep them as a customer. Let's look at payments. Here's a chart on the payments for the last 4 years from 14, and you can see that on the graph they're relatively flat. We've gone from $89 to $91. That doesn't even keep pace with inflation. So you know how to get more? You know how to get more? You need to ask for it. You need to ask for it because these customers have it. You don't see them put the beer back. They're not buying less lottery tickets. So you need to ask for it. Average cash down payment, we've been on a downward spiral there from 2014 to 16, but fortunately we're starting to see an increase in down payments. And again, you've got to ask for it. You've got to get all the money. Not what the salesperson says you've gotten all the money, because that's never the case. Someone told me, if you're not using deferred down payments, he asked me to define it for him, and so I told him what I thought a deferred down payment is, and he said, no, Ken, you're wrong. I said, okay, tell me what it is. And he said, that's what the customer lied to you didn't have when you deliver the car, because he comes up with it 2 weeks later, when you do a deferred down payment. Amount financed. It's not wrong to want to increase the amount financed, but you need to collect it because that's where the real money is. So this chart is showing, it looks like a ski slope, looks like it's going uphill, and again, it only works if you collect it. And the byproduct of all this, lower down payments, lower repayments, higher amount finance, is just a longer term. And believe me, that path is uneconomic. So longer terms are not going to do it for you. Good collections. What does good collections include? Payment device technology. I've done 3 national studies on devices, and I will tell you that there's only 2 types of operators out there. Those that are using GPS devices and those that should be. So technology and devices are extremely important. So are collections. You have to be consistent and you have to be courteous. These people may have bad credit, but they're not bad people necessarily. So you need to work with them and rebuild that bond that we've had. You need monitoring and a follow-up system to make sure what you're doing is working. You can't tie your pay plans to delinquency because delinquency can be manipulated. Every DMS system allows you to advance the due dates without taking a payment. So if you're basing everything on delinquency, you may not be getting the cash. So I would make it more of a cash basis or a team effort with regard to your pay plans. Personal interaction with customers. What built the buy here, pay here industry is the bond that we built with the customers, and that's still extremely important. Payment processing options. Learn more about texting solutions, credit cards, pay portals. Those are the way that customers can pay you today. Driving 30 miles to your lot is no longer the case, so you've got to offer these other options. You've got to have metrics to monitor your collection performance, and because recoveries are not on the rise, you've got to have recovery personnel to mitigate your losses. You've got to make sure that somebody is maximizing your recoveries. Technology, what do you need? Well, you've got to have the right DMS system. Inside your program guide are some of the checklists that we developed at NABD. There's a DMS checklist in there. Is it important to ask how much it costs? Well, I guess, but there's far more important questions to ask. And you better get those answers. So if you don't feel you're a technology expert, use the DMS checklist. And that's part of what we want to continue to develop with NIADA. It has to be integrated with other solutions. It has to be implemented into your operation. It has to actually work. And technology has to support your collection operations. You have to have security and privacy features. Those are critical today, because if you don't, you're going to have the state AG running your dealership for you. And you have to have social media and texting integration. That's the way to connect, and it's the way to collect from your customers today. So social media is where the action is, and that's where we see the most successful operators making the most money and regrowing their market share. Metrics. It's not a crime to not know what metrics are, but it's a crime if you don't start developing them. And if you want capital in this business, you're going to need these things. Trust me. Giving them your financial statement, your tax return is not going to be good enough. What do I mean? Well, Brad Thomas, who's a Wall Street analyst, said it best. It's data that helps create clarity. It makes a big difference when you're trying to find the missing piece of the puzzle, and how true that is. What metrics do you need? You need net static pool, which measures the severity and frequency of losses. You need loss to liquidation rates, which measure the paces of losses in your portfolio. You need default rates, which measure the quality of the pool of loans that you're measuring. You need loss curves to show how your customers are performing, which is typically in a bell curve. And you need recoveries, because losses are inherent in the business, so you've got to mitigate those losses. Don't know what those things are? Well, you can learn those for free, because I've got 2 videos on my website. You can just watch them in less than 10 minutes and understand what I'm talking about. There's examples of them. Won't cost you a dime, but I urge you to do that, because if you want the money tomorrow, you've got to get your metrics today. So I want to leave you with this concluding thought, and it's on this slide, that it's never too late to start over. If you weren't happy with yesterday, try something different today. Don't stay stuck on yesterday. Do better. So all these things that I've talked about over the last few minutes, where do you find those things? Where do you get those solutions? Right here at this show. You don't have to leave. They're all here. You just have to find them. So attend the educational sessions, listen to all the speakers, spend time in the exhibit hall, ask questions, network with you, because our goal is your long-term success. Thank you.